Look at that. What did it take? Like less than 2 hours? That too with all my yapping in between? We have a highly customizable home server with several apps, Traefik for reverse proxy, Authelia for authentication in less than 2 hours. Wow. What's up, everyone? Anand here from simplehomelab.com. It's been a while, hasn't it? It's been a crazy year with lots of changes, new place, new challenges, but I am back. I haven't been completely gone though. I've been busy behind the scenes. In fact, just last week, I moved my entire home lab over to Deployrr. And that got me thinking. My last video on Deployrr is over a year old. So much has changed since then. That's why I decided it was time for a new one. If you have been following me, you can probably tell there have been lots of changes, new setup, new location. I hope you like it. I'm still figuring things out, and I even have a new microphone right here. Let me know in the comments section what you think. But here's something even cooler. I promised my 10-year-old daughter I would use her music as the background for this video, so that's what you're listening to. I don't know anything about GarageBand, but that's what she used to create it. I'm really proud of her. Let me know what you think in the comments section. She will really appreciate it. Okay, let's dive in. Last week, I completed moving my home lab over to Deployrr, as I just said. If you know my GitHub repository, you know I keep everything there. My home server, my media server, web server, all the production stuff. And last week, everything was moved over to Deployrr, so I pushed the new configuration files to my GitHub repository. This felt like the perfect time to make a new video on how to use Deployrr. Plus, there were some questions left unanswered in my previous video, which was already an hour and a half long. So without further ado, let's get into Deployrr. Today, we're gonna do everything from scratch on a Proxmox LXC container. And by scratch, I mean really from scratch. Now, of course, I will link up some of my previous videos where it makes sense, even my articles, because I can't really show every single thing without making this a 4-hour video. But that's the plan, so let's get started. Let's start with the basics first. So what is Deployrr? Are you tired of spending all your time fighting complex Docker configuration? Deployrr is the ultimate shortcut for building your Docker home lab. It automates the entire setup, eliminating hours of frustrating manual work. With just a few clicks, you can install over 150 apps like Traefik, Plex, Sonar, Authelia, you name it. But Deployrr isn't a magic trick. It's a powerful educational tool. It uses the same best practices from my Ultimate Docker Media Server series, so you can learn Docker and Linux fundamentals as it builds your system. You get a professional setup and the knowledge to maintain it. For peace of mind, Deployrr features an effortless backup and restore system. So tinker all you want, experiment with confidence, knowing that you can always revert back. Whether you want a simple local stack or a secure internet-facing system with SSL, Deployrr has you covered. So stop wasting your time on headaches and start enjoying your tech. Deployrr saves you time, reduces frustration, and levels up your home lab game. Check out the link in the description below. You don't really have to take my word for it. Read through some of the testimonials that are available on Deployrr's website. Now that you know what Deployrr does in the background, let's look at the license types. There are 4 different Deployrr licenses. The free version is a great companion to the Ultimate Docker Media Server series, and it allows you to automate certain tasks described in that series. With the basic license, you can install all the apps you want and access them locally. Now, if you want to expose these apps over a reverse proxy to the internet, then take a look at the Plus version. The Pro version takes it one level above, adds some security apps like Authelia and Authentic. You even have additional features like backup and restore. So if those features interest you, then take a look at the Pro version. So if you want to support my work, purchase one of these licenses. I usually have some kind of offers going on. There will be one for Black Friday. Look out for that. But if you just want to learn, you can still follow my Ultimate Docker Media Server series or watch my videos. Those pretty much explain everything Deployrr does in the background. Now, if you're watching this video, then you probably already have Deployrr and you just want to know how to use it. So let's dive in. The ultimate Docker media server series on my website is going to be our friend. I explain many things here. In part 1 is just introduction. We don't really have to go through it, but feel free to read it because it sets the stage for what will be explained later on in this guide, in this series, in fact. So in part 2, I explained my NAS, my mini PC, and the VPS. All my home lab stuff is explained in detail here, so you understand what I have and why I do certain things that certain way. And this also feeds into how Deployrr is designed to work as well. Now in part 3, then I explain my operating system choice for my home server, which is Proxmox on my mini PC, and Ubuntu server as the operating system for my home server, which runs as an unprivileged LXC container on Proxmox. All of this is explained. There are pros and cons of doing it certain ways. Everything is covered in detail here. I won't go through the details right now. And in part 5, I show how to install Docker on Proxmox unprivileged LXC. There's also a more detailed video on it. This picture really took a lot of time for me to come up with. Just explains how everything fits together. In case you're new to home labbing, maybe try to follow along. Leave a feedback. Let me know if this even makes sense or not. Then it explains how to install Ubuntu on Proxmox unprivileged LXC. There's a detailed video as I just mentioned. In this guide, we're going to do it, or in this video, we're going to do it quite fast. So be sure to watch the previous video if you want to learn the ins and outs. So let's begin. We're going to follow the steps that are described here, but I know what they are. So I'm just going to go ahead and start doing it. Okay, so here I am on my Proxmox web interface. Let me zoom it up so you can see. We're going to create a new container. Now, before we start, you will have to download the template for it. So let's go over to my SSD storage, which is where I download all the templates. So if I go to container templates, and you can look at the templates here, search for Ubuntu, and there should be one for 24.04. I recommend the long-term support releases, the LTS releases. So 24.04 is the last one. So download that. I already did that. So we're going to create a new container. Clicking here, let's call this 113, and I'm gonna call this UDMS, or let's call it Deployrr, because we're building it with Deployrr. It's going to be an unprivileged container. We're going to enable nesting, which allows running Docker inside an LXC, which is also a containerization system. So you need to turn on nesting. It's now turned on by default, which is great. So let's type in a password. I'm just going to type in a simple password to get going. Probably not enough. So 3. Okay, I think the container ID is the problem. So I'm going to try a different one. There you go. So 113 was already used. So 114, I'm going to store it locally on my Proxmox NVMe disk. And the template we're going to use is the 24.04. So let's pick that. Keep moving. I'm gonna make this 64. I recommend at least 64 gigabytes or even more if you have it, even 96, I would say. The reason being, as you install more apps, you're gonna download a lot of Docker images. That's gonna fill up the disk. And also if you have apps like Plex that has metadata, these can balloon over time and fill up your disk space. You can always increase the space later on as well. So don't freak out, but 64 is a good starting point. So let's do 64. I will turn on ACLs normally. I also turn on the SSD features, which also lazy time is a good one. No A time is a good one as well. These things improve the performance a little bit. I won't go into the detail right now. Okay, so for CPU, it really depends on how many cores you have. I will go for 8 or 12 usually, because mine has 16. So I'm going to go 8 for this one. Now with memory here again, I'll pick 8 gigabytes with the 4 GB of 4 gigabytes of swap memory. But again, it depends on how much you have on your system. So let's do this for now. And then the rest of it can be left as is. In this case, I know what IP address I want to assign to my home server. So I'm going to put that in here. because I already set up port forwards from my router, which I will get to later on. So I want to use the same IP here. So I'm going to pick this one, 24. This is how you're supposed to enter it, 192.168.5.113, which will be the IP address, and the base 24. Next, it's going to be my gateway, which will be my OPNsense firewall. So that would be 192.168.5.1. We're going to look at all of these things as we go through various steps. So for now, you can enter these are what applies to you, which could be 192.168.1.1 for gateway, which is the most common one. Okay, so let's leave it at that. We're not going to change any of these things, and we're going to confirm. We're going to confirm this. We're not going to start it. Let's let it create the LXC, and then we'll come back to it and do some more stuff. So the LXC has been created. So 114 right here, Deployrr. So it's ready. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to options here and enable a few more things. So let's click on this one, edit, keyctl, and fuse are stuff that we're going to enable. Now, not really needed, but if you're going to use Rclone like I have shown in some of my previous videos, then you need fuse. So let's enable that. We're going to look at it in this video. I have moved on from Rclone for various reasons, but we're going to see how to do it using Deployrr, just in case, you know. For some of you, that might be the only way to do it. So we did that. It's done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do some more things before we go on further. So if you follow the Ultimate Docker Media Server series, there are a few things that are described, and now I continue to work on the series, so you can see that there are some guides that are still missing. They will come later on, but we're going to do the network node pass-through and the integrated GPU pass-through. So the GPU from my mini PC, which runs Proxmox, we're going to make it available inside the LXC container and in an unprivileged environment, and it's really easy to do, and it's one of the reasons why I recommend an unprivileged LXC container as well. So we're going to do what is described in these two guides here. There are also videos that you can follow along, but I know what to do, so I won't go into the details. What I'm going to do right now is, if I go to my Proxmox console right here and go over to cd/dev/dri and do an ls, you're going to see my graphics cards, card 0 and render D128. These are the graphics cards. We're going to pass through that. Then if I go back and to the net folder, you're going to see the TUN device, and that's also something that we're going to pass through. I won't explain all of these things. Remember that we are on Proxmox host, not inside our LXC yet. We haven't even turned it on yet. So if I do an ls-al, you're going to see this is owned by root, the network device. And then if I go back to /dev/dri and if I do an ls-al, you're going to see that it's also owned by root. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a shortcut and I'm going to go over to my media server, or actually I will go back in here and go to, this is my Proxmox host. I'm going to go to /etc/pve/LXC. This is where all the LXC configurations are. My media server is 111. So I'm going to do a nano 111.conf. This is going to show all the configurations of my media server that I use in real life. So I'm going to copy pretty much everything that's in here. I'm just taking a shortcut. So what's in here? These are the lines that are needed to pass through the network device from the host machine into the Proxmox unprivileged LXC container. Also the network device node and the graphics card and the network device node. So I'm going to copy these two lines right here, or all these lines right here, and I'm going to exit out. Now I'm going to do a nano and 114, which is the one that we're working on. So go all the way to the end. I'm going to paste these lines right here. Now these numbers here are quite important. The card 0, these need to match what you have in your system. So all of this is explained in my video or the guide. So refer to those for more detailed explanation on how these things work, including some of these permissions right here. Those need to be correct as well. So we copy pasted the lines from my existing configuration, a shortcut. So we have the network device node and the graphics card now passed into the LXC container, which we haven't even started yet. Next, we're going to start the LXC and do some configurations inside. What configurations? These are explained in detail in the part 5 of my guide. So after we've done all of these things that are described right here, we're going to follow some of these steps here. So I'm going to start doing those, but first I need to start my unprivileged LXC. So I'm going to do that right now. Shouldn't take too long. Remember that this is the first time we're starting the LXC. So I'm really showing you how to do things from scratch. So here I am. I'm going to log in as root because that's what we used. So I'm at the terminal of my Proxmox unprivileged LXC. So let's start doing some of the steps from there. I know what to do, so I'm just going to start doing those steps. So first thing is we have to create some users. So right here are the steps. So now Deployrr can automate some of these steps for you. I just like to do them before I start Deployrr, so I'm ready. So if we go back here, sudo add user anand, sudo add user anand. So this creates a new user. I'm just gonna type a simple password for now. I don't need to give any of these details. Yes, then it is correct. Now that's done. Now I need to add myself Anand to the sudo group. So sudo add user. Oh, I don't need to give sudo because I'm already root. So add user Anand sudo. So this adds the user Anand to the sudo group so I can elevate myself to the root user when needed. So now what I can do is I can exit out of this and then I can log in as Anand with my username and password. Now when I need to use sudo, I can elevate myself to sudo when needed. So what are the next few steps? Now you do have to update and upgrade. So I can do that right now, but that's going to take a long time. So let's keep that for now. Now you can also make some changes to your SSH port. It's not really going to offer additional security, but I like to do it anyways. So I'm going to do sudo nano /etc/ssh/shd.config and then type in my password. Then go down here, edit the port, and let's change it to 2053. Okay, so we did that. So we made that change. What else do we need to do? Now, don't worry about all of these things. Remember that these guides are for people who want to do stuff manually, but many steps are automated, but not this one though. Now, I like to add these 3 lines and it offers some performance improvements in the server environment. I'm not going to explain what those are. So let's just copy these lines just in case, and we'll do sudo nano /etc/sysctl.conf. You can find explanations or use ChatGPT to figure it out. So we did that already. Let's reboot now. So these changes take effect. Now we've configured everything that we need to configure in our LXC. And so now we're ready to start using Deployrr. So I rebooted the unprivileged LXC. So I'm going to log in right now. I'm logged in. One of the most common questions I get from people is that, hey, I purchased Deployrr, but how do I get started? There are 2 different websites that everyone should be familiar with, the Deployrr users. One is the Deployrr documentation website, which is docs.deployrr.app. You will find those links in the description below. And another one is on my website here. Right here, there's a dedicated Deployrr tab. And you have the get started link right here. So if you click on that and go down, you're going to see all the instructions to get started. We'll get to those in just a minute, but what I want to also share is that you have your profile on the website. Be sure to link your Discord ID right here, because that's really how you get support. So what that does is that it gives you access to the private lounge, the Deployrr channel, which is where you can post all your support questions and get them answered. So be sure to do that. Many people forget to do it and they don't see the support channels. So going back here now, this is how you get Deployrr. So let's copy this one and go back here. Now, I don't want to do it here. Let's switch over to Mobax term, which is the SSH client I like to use. So I'm going to open that up right now. So here I am on Mobax term. I apologize if the text is too small, but we're going to create a new host right here, new session. SSH, we know the IP address 192.168.5.113 for this one. So we're going to use that. I'm going to specify a username, which is going to be Anand, and our port number is 053. That's what we use. So let's do that. And it's asking me for my password. I'm going to type in my password and I'm in. Let me change the font a little bit because I don't like the way it looks. So font, let me zoom in. There you go. So we are at the terminal of the Proxmox Unprivileged LXC that we just created. So let's follow the steps to get started right now. So where are those? I think I closed it, but that doesn't matter. So I'm going to go here, get started. You will find the same information in Deployrr GitHub repository as well. In fact, so if you go to, I think it's this one right here. So if you go to Deployrr the repository, everything is described in detail here as well. So we're going to copy this command right here. That is going to download Deployrr, and let's do that. Oh, so it's good that it's happening. We don't have curl installed, so our curl, so we need to install that. So sudo apt install curl, that is needed. Now let's do that first. Okay, so looks like I don't have, there you go. Now I just did an update to the apt update. So now let me try to install it again. There you go. So now it's done. We've installed it. So now I'm going to copy the command again. And then that's going to download and start Deployrr. There you go. It started Deployrr. So I'm going to exit out of it by pressing Ctrl+C and show you that it's been downloaded. Now, if you want to start it again, then you do a /Deployrr, and that should start Deployrr again. This is explained in the getting started page, but this is how you do it. So here we are on Deployrr. On the first start, it installs some applications or packages that are needed for it to run. Now, before we actually get started with Deployrr, let's take care of some of the prerequisites, not the prerequisites menu right here, but prerequisites for us to set up a home lab. So I'm going to assume we're going to use Traefik as the reverse proxy. So if you're not really going to use Traefik or a reverse proxy, or if you just have the basic license and you want to install apps locally, or if you want to install apps locally but use Tailscale to expose your apps to the internet, which is something that we will see in this video as well, then you can skip these steps. But if you plan to use Traefik as your reverse proxy or Nginx proxy manager, there are some steps from what I'm about to show you that you will have to follow. So for this, we're going to use my Ultimate Docker Media Server series again, part 18, where I talk about setting up Traefik. Now, there is a lot of detail in this guide. I think it's probably about 12,000 words long, but what we really need is the prep work to set up Traefik. So everything that we need to do here or to get started is described here. For example, Cloudflare. Now, Cloudflare is optional because Traefik supports other providers as well, but Cloudflare is one of the most commonly used ones. I use it and I cannot really find a way to support every provider at this time, so I went with the most common one, so Cloudflare. So even if you have your domain name with another provider, you purchased it with somebody else, you can still change the DNS servers and point them to Cloudflare so you can manage your DNS records on Cloudflare. So domain name, again, if you want to expose it using a reverse proxy, you need a domain name. You will have to create the proper DNS records as it is shown right here, which is a root domain pointing to your public WAN IP, and then or a record pointing to your public IP, and a CNAME record for a wildcard subdomain that points to your root domain. So these two are needed. Leave the records gray clouded right now until we finish with Deployrr, and then you can orange cloud it after we're done setting up Traefik. Another thing that you need to do is on Cloudflare settings, enable full mode for SSL. This is needed, often something that people forget to do. So you need the full SSL mode on Cloudflare SSL settings. Now these menus keep changing all the time, so you might not find it it may not appear the same way as it is on this guide. So watch out for that. Now, another thing you need to do is set up port forwarding on your router, which means port 80 and 443 on the internet side of things need to be forwarded to ports 80 and 443 on the unprivileged LXC container. Now that's one way to do it. Now in the recent update that I did with my Ultimate Docker Media Server series this year, I changed things a little bit. Now you have additional options. I will get to that at some point, but everything is explained in detail here. Now, just a few seconds back, I said port 80 on the outside to port 80 on the home server. But in this picture, you see port 80 being connected to port 81 on the home server. Now, what this does is it gives you some additional flexibility to control the way the apps are exposed. You can expose some of the apps using a domain name or a fully qualified domain name only within your home network, or you can make it available outside your home network. You get that flexibility when you do it this way. We're going to see that as well. So if your router allows it, then expose port 80 on the internet side to port 81 on the home server. In this case, the IP address is 192.168.1.160, but remember the unprivileged LXC has 192.168.5.11, and that's what we're going to use. Then what else? Now, if you don't want this flexibility of exposing only some apps to the internet using a fully qualified domain name, or you don't want that flexibility, you can go directly to the simple setup, which is 80 forwarded to 80 and 443 forwarded to 443. Both of these options are possible with the Deployrr. The last part is firewall. So we will have to allow these ports on the server that we are working on. So let's go back here. We're going to exit out of the menu and we're going to do sudo ufw allow 80 because we want port 80 to be allowed. Sudo ufw allow 81. If you are doing just a simple 80 to 80, then you don't have to do the second one. Likewise, sudo ufw allow 443 and sudo ufw allow 444. Now we also have the SSH port. We don't want to get locked out, so we're gonna do sudo ufw allow 2053. Now for some flexibility, so I don't get locked out, I also like to allow connections coming from inside my home network or my tailnet or tailscale. So if you are using tailscale, you could do that. Or for now, we're gonna allow connections from inside our home network. So sudo ufw allow from 192.168.5.0/24. I think I have the right syntax. Let's try it. Okay, that's done. So if I do sudo ufw status numbered, I think. Okay, so I'll have to enable ufw first. Sudo ufw enable. Yes, because I already allowed the port, we won't get disconnected. Now, if I do this, you're going to see all our firewalls rules that we just added. So we're good for right now. So if I go back in here, we satisfied all of those things right now. Okay, so before we move forward, I'm going to just quickly show you my port forwarding. So here I am on my OPNsense router. So if I go to port forward section right here, you can see that I am forwarding 80 to 80 and 443 to 443. So let's edit that right now. So I want to do 80 to, I want to do it to a custom port 81, right? Because we're going to do redirect to 81. So I'm going to save that right now. Again, this is OPNsense. On your router, it might be different. So 80 is going to 81 on my home server. And likewise, 443 should go to 444 port 44. So we did that. Let's apply that. So now these ports are being forwarded to the unprivileged LXC container that we just created. There is one more step that we need to do to be able to use this advanced mode of exposing the apps, like some of the apps being exposed only internally within the home network and some exposed outside to the internet using traffic. For that, we will also need a router that's capable of hairpinning or Split-DNS. One way to achieve the same effect is also to use a local DNS. So if you had Pi-hole or AdGuard Home running, you could do the same thing by going over to filters right here and DNS rewrites, and you create these two records. I have a mistake right here, so I'm going to fix that. So uninstall.com is the domain that we're going to be using for today. So the root domain and the wildcard domain are being forwarded to 192.168.5.113, which is the IP address of the unprivileged LXC. Now, you may ask why we're doing this. What happens is that when you expose some apps to your home network, they won't work if you don't have this. Why? Because when you make a request, for example, at radar.uninstall.com, this request goes out to Cloudflare to figure out which host this request needs to be forwarded to. So it goes outside your home network and comes back in. So all the traffic is going to look like it's coming from outside your home network. So if you have some apps exposed only internally within your home network, then they will not work because every request is going to be coming from outside. So you will have to add this in your local DNS. Now, when I make a request for radar.uninstall.com, my AdGuard Home will intercept and forward the request to 192.168.5.113, and so the traffic stays inside your home network. So that's why this is needed. So you need a router that has hairpinning capability, or a Split-DNS, or a local DNS where you can create these records. So now we've done all the prerequisite steps that are needed. Once again, all of these things are needed only if you plan to expose your apps to the internet using Traefik reverse proxy, or in fact just plan to use Traefik reverse proxy irrespective of how you're going to expose the apps. There is one more prerequisite to be taken care of. So if you go back to my Traefik guide and scroll a little bit down, since we're going to be using Cloudflare, we need to create some credentials so Traefik can use Cloudflare and create records and do things like that. So if you go down here, it says create Cloudflare DNS API Token. So we're going to do that. Now, once again, we're going to follow the instructions for Cloudflare. There are other providers, as you can see on Traefik's website here, but we're going to follow the instructions for Cloudflare, and we need these details. So my guide here explains everything, even my Traefik video, or the Traefik reverse proxy video that I have done in the past. You should probably see a link just about now or in the description below. That also shows you how to follow these steps and create your scoped API token. Pay attention to the permissions. It should be zone read and zone DNS edit. Many people make a mistake here and choose the wrong permission, and then Traefik fails to get this SSL certificate. So pay attention to this part right here. You don't have to really mess with anything else. So you're going to create the scoped API token and copy that and use it in this video later on. So copy that and save it somewhere safely. Now we completed all the requirements that are needed to move forward. Once again, keep in mind, these are only needed if you plan to expose your apps to the internet using reverse proxy like Traefik. If you're going to expose your apps only within your local network, so you access them using the local IP address and port number, you don't need to follow these steps. Or if you plan to expose your apps using Tailscale, as we might see later on in this video, or in fact, I do have a guide on that. So if we go back to this part right here and go all the way down, there should be a guide on Tailscale right here. There's even a video on it. So if you plan to expose your apps to the internet using Tailscale, then you don't need to follow the prerequisites that I just showed. Okay, back to what we really want to do here, which is to start building our media server using Deployrr, or Docker-based home lab using Deployrr. So here I am on the terminal of the unprivileged LXC that we had just created. So let's start Deployrr again. So ./Deployrr, and there you go. So now we've taken care of all the prerequisites, right? So we can start with another set of prerequisites, which is the first step in using Deployrr. So Deployrr is organized in a logical flow. So you start with one menu at a time and then keep going through the rest of the menu items. So you start with the prerequisites. Now, if you miss any step, you're going to see a warning. So you will know the first step is to accept the disclaimer, which is this is a tool that is supposed to help you learn as you go along. Please do not use it to install and manage your home server. That's not really the purpose of Deployrr. So please, if you don't want to get your hands dirty and read through some documentation and make mistakes and learn and things like that, please do not use Deployrr, but because you might get frustrated. On the other hand, if you want to have a supporting tool to help you as you make mistakes and learn, and when you are comfortable, you just want to save time, then Deployrr really comes in handy because you know what to do, and now you just want to get there fast, because then Deployrr can help you. So if you actually read through some of the testimonials on Deployrr website, this is exactly what users share. So please be ready to get your hands dirty. So that's basically the essence of the disclaimer. So we're going to accept that right now. Then we're going to go into packages, because this is going to install some packages that are required for Deployrr to run. So let's do that right now. So what is happening in the background is that there is a sudo apt update command that updates all the packages, and then there is a bunch of different applications that are being installed, which was actually described in part 5 of the UDMS guide. So if we scroll down right now, we saw that already, but I'm just going to highlight it one more time. So here's the list of all the packages that are being installed. Here you will also see an explanation of what is being installed. Okay, so here, let's go back here. Now that's been done. Deployrr also checks to make sure that internet connectivity is working at the end, because on some Debian systems, this was creating some issues. So I added in this step to make sure that you have internet connectivity. If you don't, then there are some steps. Go back to docs.deployrr.app and you have some troubleshooting steps that you can use if your internet connectivity fails. For now, we're going to go back here. We're going to set a username. It automatically detects the first user that we created. So we're going to use that. And we're going to set this, the type. In this case, it's going to be unprivileged Proxmox LXC. I'm going to go back in here so you can see the other options. You have a privileged LXC, which I don't use often and I don't really recommend as well, because it's not, there are some things that has to be done differently with the privileged LXC. You can use a virtual machine as well on any hypervisor. As you can see, bare bones system is also supported. You can also use it on a virtual private server. I use it on a virtual private server. I have unprivileged LXCs, 2 unprivileged LXCs. In fact, that's my setup for right now. Okay, so let's select that. So if we keep moving, then we did that. The setup mode is important, because a local mode is when your apps are exposed only locally. And if you go into, if you hit that, it's a toggle. So it toggles your setting to hybrid mode. What is hybrid mode? It's explained on the screen as you see here. So we're going to enable hybrid mode because we're going to use my domain and we're going to expose the apps to the internet. We're going to do all of that stuff. So hybrid is what we need. Then Docker folder. Now, this is again something that's explained in the link that you see here, or if you go back to the UDMS series and look at some of the previous articles, I believe it's the one here. No, this one, part 14. This shows how to set up your Docker environment, create all the files and things like that. Now, if you're using a free version of the Deployrr, which doesn't require any registration or payment, that can also set up the environment automatically for you with the right permissions and everything. So, so that's available as a free feature. So anyways, now Deployrr can do this automatically for you. So what we're going to do right now is going to pick where we want all the files to be stored. I'm going to follow exactly what's described in the Ultimate Docker Media Server series, so you can go back and forth between the two of them. So I'm going to go into /home, Anand, and I'm going to create a folder called Docker here. It doesn't exist, so when I hit confirm, this folder is going to be created. I'm going to confirm that. So that's done. I'm going to create a backup folder as well. So once again, I'll use the same structure that was used in the UDMS series. So I'm going to do Docker backups. This is where all your backups will be stored. So we're done with those two right here. Okay. And then we're going to create the environment. So when I hit create the environment, it's going to create the Docker environment. You can actually see what's happening right here. All the folders, files that are being created. So let's pick the time zone. I'm in Europe and Zurich. So I'm going to hit that. You can see all the information here. In fact, pause and read through it so you understand what's happening. So if I go back in here, and I'm going to exit out of it right now and show you that the stuff that Deployrr created. So cd docker and ls-al, this is all what was created. Now if you read through my my Docker media server guide and go all the way down, and there should be files and folders. So right here, everything's explained, all folders, what is the purpose of the folder, everything's explained. So if you're using Deployrr, great, but please understand what happens in the background so you really know what to do when something goes wrong. Because remember, Deployrr cannot fix everything. So keep that in mind. So we have the files and folders now. Now we're going to go back in here and start Deployrr again. So back on Deployrr now, we're going to continue with the prerequisites that we just started. So I'm going to hit enter. So let's keep going. So going back into prerequisites, the next thing we need to do is to set the server IP. So I'm going to do 192.168.5.113, which is the IP address of the unprivileged LXC that we just created. If you are on a VPS, you could use your public IP address here, but we're in a home environment, so this is the IP that we're going to use. So that's done. The next step is to do enter your domain. So we're going to do uninstall.com, which is our test domain for today. Then let's do the system checks. So Deployrr goes through and checks everything for you. Installed Docker, if it's not installed, checks a few different things in the background to make sure that when you're ready to deploy or start deploying packages, then you're ready to do it actually. So in this case, you can see that Deployrr is installing Docker because we never installed Docker. Remember, this was a brand new, fresh, unprivileged LXC with nothing on it. So we're installing Docker here, and basically what happens in the background is Deployrr is using the convenience script provided by Docker officially to install the repository and the packages that are needed to install Docker. So in this case, you will see that Docker CE Community Edition is being installed, and the package, few other packages, including the Docker Compose, which is now a plugin built into Docker. So it's done now. What else is done? So all the checks passed, so we're ready to move forward. So we're going to hit that, and we're going to do domain checks. Now this is optional if you had the local mode enabled here. It is not optional anymore because we have the hybrid mode. So we're going to hit that, and Deployrr is going to go through and do some checks in the background. You can see that port IP address port 80 is open to the internet, 443 is open to the internet, and it's working. It's checking the public IP, and then it check this one right here, checking the IP address resolution. The IP address of the domain is 192.168.5.113, and this is because we added the local DNS on AdGuard home. If we didn't do that, this should be the same as the one right here. Anyway, so in this case, I'm glad that this is happening. Deployrr is checking to see if both the IP addresses match, which it is not, so it's failing and exiting. So we have to override it. In this case, I know what I'm doing, so I'm gonna exit out because I know that I have the local DNS, which is overriding the IP address that I set and forwarding the request to 192.168.5.113, my unprivileged LXC. I know that that's how it's supposed to work, so I'm going to exit out. Oh, actually, I didn't have to do that. So I'm going to go back in here, this would be a good time to go into the settings menu and enable the turn the mode from normal to expert. Now expert is use it at your own risk mode, which means you know what you're doing. In this case, I know what I'm doing, and if you have a simple setup where 80 is forwarded to 80 and 443 to 443, and you don't have all these, you know, AdGuard home in between, Pi-hole, whatever, or even OPNsense or advanced firewall, you probably don't have to do any of these things. So in this case, I'm turning on the expert mode. Now I'm going to go back and run. Oh, once again, I exited one too many escape keys. So right here, let's go back and run domain checks now, and I should see an option to override. Okay, so there you go. So it doesn't match, but I'm going to override. So that's done. So the same way, there should be another one right here which says the IP address of a subdomain is also not matching, which is the same reason why. So I'm going to override that one as well. Now gray clouded is passed because remember the DNS records on cloud server or Cloudflare, we kept them gray clouded. The rest of the checks are passing. Only the part about the IP address was not working, so that's been fixed. So this check is now passed. Now we do have to verify the license. So far you don't really need to register anything. So if you want to move forward, this would be the time to register your purchase. So we're going to use uninstall.com, and then we're going to use Deployrr test at simplehomelab.com, which is going to be my test email. Now this is what we're gonna now what you will have to do is create a pin. If this is the first time you're using Deployrr, you will have to create a pin. A lot of people create the pin and they forget, so I'm going to show you how to get your pin if you, in case you forgot the pin. Resetting is another story, but everything can be done from within Deployrr, so I will show you how to do that. For now, I'm just gonna do 1111 as the pin. So that's been done. A pin has been created. So all the stuff has been done. Oh, well, actually not. I still have to go back in here and verify. Now this is the email, that's the domain, and we're gonna supply the pin that we just created, so which is 111, and that's going to verify. Okay, so a pro level license was found for this email ID. So that's been confirmed, so the rest of the features get activated. Now there is an option for telemetry that popped up. This is personal, so it's your choice. Do you want to share some information with me that gets recorded in a database? So I get to see in which environment Deployrr is running, so I can focus my effort on, you know, Ubuntu versus Debian versus other environments. This can be really helpful, so the telemetry data gets into the database. If you don't want to enable that, that's perfectly up to you. So right now we're set to minimum, which is the bare minimum that's needed to check the license and verification. So let's leave it at that for this test. Let's go back into the about menu. I mentioned that you can view and reset your pin from within Deployrr. So here you go. There is a view pin option. So when I click on that, you can see what pin you created. If you don't have your pin, you can use the reset pin option to find it back up again. Now we're ready to go to the next step, which is to set up the system stuff. So if you go into system menu, you will have the option to set up a few things related to your underlying system. So in this case, first step would be to have some mounts in place. What does that mean? Sometimes we have our media stored in our NAS, so we'll have to mount that inside our Docker host here to make it available to Docker apps, for example, media folders, and make them available to Plex. So that's under mounts, and then you have certain folders, options that you need to set up. Then we'll go into GPU and a few other stuff, but let's start with mounts. This is a big topic. So if I go into the mounts menu, you can mount remote folders using Rclone or SMB or Samba or CIFS. The last option is NFS, but that will not work for unprivileged LXC, so we don't have that option available here. You can do Rclone mounts, or you can do SMB mounts. There's another option that I didn't list here, which is what I use now. If you have been following my videos, so if I go back to my YouTube channel right here, this video right here, I'm gonna zoom in so you can see. So this video right here, Rclone SMB Mount, that really explains how Rclone works, why I was using it, and what were the benefits of using it and all of that stuff. I won't go into that here. You can use Rclone. So let's start with that, in fact. But in the end, I won't be using Rclone in this video because I had some reliability issues. So instead, I went into another option that's not listed here, which is called bind mounting on Proxmox. So we'll get to that. Let's start with Rclone first. So first we need to install Rclone. So we're going to do that right now. Now, by the way, these things have been covered in my previous video as well. The steps are pretty much the same. So really not much different to do here, but I'll do it anyway. So the next step is to add an remote SMB mount. So I'm going to mount my Synology NAS here, so it's available for us to use. So I want to add, so name for your remote SMB device. So I'm going to say DS918, which is my NAS, and I'm going to call this Rclone. Okay, so just so I know I mounted this using Rclone. Okay, then the IP address 192.168.5.254, and then a username. I'm going to do Anand, and I believe I used GoBox 1, 2, 3 and question mark. I think that's what I used. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We'll see what happens. So okay, the remote is valid and working, so I was right with the password there. So that's been done. Now what we need to do is auto mount the SMB share when the system starts. So what this is going to do is install a script in the background that will automatically mount this Rclone folder when we start the Docker host or when we reboot the Docker host. So let's do that. So the first question you will have to answer is, where should this mount be mounted, right? So I'm gonna do /media/Rclone, or I'll say, okay, let's say, what do we want to call this? Let's say media/data/Rclone. Okay, so or I'm gonna call this the same, DS918 Rclone. Okay, so let's confirm that. If this folder doesn't exist, it will be created. Now we need to add a cache folder. Okay, so a folder for cache, because Rclone has caching mechanism which speeds up certain things, which is the reason why I was using it in the first place. But then I had some issues and I moved away from it. So we're gonna do media/data/ let's do DS918 cache. Okay, so that's done. If it doesn't exist, that will be created. Now you can specify the size of the cache, but remember we set 64 gigabytes for the whole disk. So this would be a situation where you could add additional disk with a bigger size if you want to do some caching. But 64 gigabytes, I wouldn't recommend adding a cache. But for now, because we're not going to be using all of the cache, so I'm just going to say 32. I don't really need it, but so I'm just going to add a number right there. So everything is being created right now. Let's see what's happening. Okay, so all of that is done. So if I go into /media, I'm gonna see data. I see data, so I'm gonna go to data. If I do this, so I have two folders. So if I go to DS Rclone and do an ls, let's see here. Okay, it was just being quite slow. So if I do an ls, you can see all the files from my NAS loaded up here. Okay, so it was done. So let's go back to my home folder, start Deployrr backup again. So we have one folder mounted. The next way to mount folders is using SMB, but once again, SMB does not work on unprivileged LXC. Sorry, I left out this part in the beginning. So both SMB mounting and NFS mounting does not work on unprivileged LXCs. This is why we can't use them. This is why Rclone was the only option. But if you're on Proxmox, there is another way to do it, which is called bind mounting. Bind mounting is explained in Proxmox documentation. So if I go back in here, in fact, if you Google bind mount and Proxmox, you will arrive at this documentation where everything is explained in detail if you want to understand. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to my Proxmox interface, go into the host console. So if I go in here, what I have done is that I have already mounted my NAS using SMB protocol on Proxmox host machine. So if I do nano/etc/fs tab, that shows I have 2 mount points, 2 folders from my NAS machine that I have already mounted here on the Proxmox host machine. Be very clear, on the Proxmox host machine, not the unprivileged LXC container. So at this location, /media//nas/data2 and data, these are the 2 folders. I'm going to make these 2 folders, which are in the Proxmox host machine, into the unprivileged LXC container using bind mounts. How do I do that? I'm going to take a shortcut right here once again. So if I go into, once again, I'm on the Proxmox host machine. So cd, I keep repeating that because I know many people who've run the commands by mistake on the host machine versus on the LXC machine, so they get really confused. That's why I keep repeating or identifying where I am at this time when I'm running this command. So be patient with that. So if I go to /etc/pve and cd LXC, these are all my LXC machines right now. So I'm going to use my media server 1, so which would be nano 111, because I'm going to reuse the bind mounts. So these 2 folders right here, data and data 2. So I'm going to copy these 2 lines. Remember, these have to be created manually using command lines. So I'm going to edit 114 now, which is where we're going to 114 or 113, I forget. 114. So 114. So let's go all the way down, and we're going to paste those 2 lines here because those are the 2 mount points we need. So I'm going to change this to, because this is the first mount, let's change it to 0, and let's change this one into 1. Okay, so we've done that. Now if I do exit, and if I go back to the resources of this machine right here, now I can see those 2 options here. So if I click edit here, I can't really change much here. You see the disk image is already loading that path. This is the reason why we couldn't do it from the interface, because if I add a mount point, it would automatically create a disk image, not allow me to load map an existing folder. That's why I couldn't do it. So now these 2 are there. So if I go into I'm going to exit out of Deployrr, and I'm going to go into /media and see if it's already mounted. If it's not, so where are they going? So it's media, NAS, and data, right? So that's where they are. So I'm going to reboot my sudo reboot, and that's going to mount it the next time the container boots back up again. So let's wait for that to boot. There you go. So I'm going to connect back up. Then now I'm going to go to media and see. There you go. So now you see NAS. If I go to NAS, and I will see 2 mount points. If I go to data, I'm going to see all the different folders in there. So that's it. So that's my NAS. This is a different way of mounting folders. I have slowly moved on from Rclone to this just because I can do it. But for some people, Rclone might be the way to go. It still works well if done properly. So just because you're having issues does not mean it's finicky, but it did work for me for many years before I moved on to this. So pick one or the other, or if you're on a bare bones system or a VPS, you can even do the SMB or the NFS option. So we're done with the mounting part of things. Then we'll have to set up our folders. So if I go into folders here, then we need to set where we want our downloads to be at. So I'm going to choose downloads, and I'm going to I'm going to put them in my home folder. Once again, I don't have a lot of space, 64 gigabytes. If you remember, you can put it directly on your NAS or on the other places if you want to. But I would recommend, if you're using Rclone, not to put your downloads directly in an Rclone folder, because with the caching, it gets really messy. So for now, I'm going to use downloads. But in this case, because we're doing bind mounting, I could even put it directly in my NAS if I want, because I don't have any caching mechanism in between causing issues. So I could do that if I want, but for simplicity, I'm going to do /downloads, and that folder doesn't exist, so I will let it create the folder, then media folder 1. Now here I could pick the media folder using the Rclone mount that we created previously, or I could use the bind mount. So I'm going to use the bind mount right now. So I'm going to do media/NAS, which is where it's bind mounted. I'm going to do data, and then there is a media folder here, so I'm going to use the media folder. So I'm confirming, make sure that the path is right and it exists. So that's the key here. That was the first one, and I'm going to do the second one here as well. So media/NAS/data2/media. That's the second path, so I'm going to confirm that right now. Now I could go in and add a few more folders here. We're not going to install the rest of the apps here, so I won't go into it. But if you are going to install some of the comics app, books app, please go in here and add those folders. So the folder part of it is done. Next, we'll have to enable the GPU. If you remember, in the prerequisites section, we passed through the integrated GPU from the host machine into the unprivileged LXC. So if we passed it through properly, if I go to /dev/DRI, I should see the exact same devices that were available on the host machine available here because we passed it through. One thing I forgot to say is that you might have to make sure that the permissions are right, because if I go to cd/DRI and do an ls-al, the permissions are set to RW, which is globally writable. So read, write for user, group, and anyone. So this has to be set as RW, or else Plex cannot write to the or use your integrated graphics card because it doesn't have writing permissions, and so transcoding will fail. So make sure that you have this permission. How do you do that? You can do chmod 666 and then star. So everything inside this folder, be very careful that I'm already in /dev/DRI. So the safer way to do would be chmod recursively -r/dev/DRI. This is going to change the permission for everything inside this folder to RW. And we're going to do the same thing for /dev/net. I think, no, cd./net. Here too, if I do an ls-al, I think I have RW. Once again, you can do chmod 666. Actually, yeah. Once again, a reminder. This happens on the host machine. You cannot change the permission inside the unprivileged LXC. I'm on the host machine. I just want to remind that I'm on the host machine for like the 10th time. So chmod 666 pun. Oh, that's it. Since it's already done for me, I'm not going to do that right now. Let me go back in here and start Deployrr again, and net. There you go. I also have the TUN device on the unprivileged LXC. So let me go back to my home folder, start Deployrr, and go back to the system. Now I can enable these two options. If you don't pass it through properly, this step will fail. It won't stop you from moving forward, but it will fail. Right now, it's going to look for the graphics card in this location. Once again, read through the nice messages that you see in there. A graphics card was found, so that will be enabled automatically. Likewise, the network card will be checked, and a network card was found, so we're ready to move forward. The next step is bash aliases. Now, their Docker commands can be lengthy. They can be very hard to remember. So I tried to find a way to simplify managing my system using the command line. I use Docker commands and Docker Compose commands a lot in my everyday life. And so these bash aliases really saved me some time to think and even remember all the commands. So if you go back to my Ultimate Docker Media Server guide and look through the list of topics that I have here, there is one called Essential Docker Commands and Time-Saving Aliases. So everything that Deployrr does, or what it sets up, is explained right here. All the commands. What is the alias? What is the command behind that? What kind of output will you see when you run this command? I put a lot of effort into creating this documentation. Once again, if you really like it, if you feel that this is useful to you, you will not find anything like this on the internet that provides you everything from beginning to the end. So please consider becoming a member if you find that this has been useful. If you're already a member, I really appreciate the support, because you're here watching this video for a long time, which means you're already using Deployrr. So either as a part, either by purchasing Deployrr or as a part of a membership. So either way, I appreciate your support. So you will see all of these things here. There's also a page in Deployrr documentation, which will show you all the commands that Deployrr installs. Okay, so this is Deployrr specific. So if I go to Deployrr docs.deployrr.app and under operating system, bash aliases Deployrr, here is a list of all the commands that Deployrr installs for you. Okay, so we will be using a lot of these as we move forward, so or at least some of it. So it's important. I highly recommend that you install these bash aliases. It is optional. You can use the full command if you want to. I recommend this because when you go on to my Discord server and ask for support, sometimes I might ask you to run some commands. It's also very easy for me to give you the alias and have you run it on your site and share the screenshot. So we're going to do that right now and let it do its magic. It's done. How do I know that the aliases are installed properly? If I go back in here and I'm going to exit out and then come back in, look at the color of the prompt. It's different with a green username and yellow for host name. So this is how I know. Even when some people provide screenshots on my Discord server, I automatically know whether they have my aliases installed or not, because these colors just give it away for me. So anyway, so now we have the aliases installed. So I'm gonna go open Deployrr back up again and go back to the system menu. Okay, so let's finish up the system menu part of it. So system menu, so the last one is SMTP details. Okay, so this has not been implemented fully, but I do have plans to have some type of a mail transfer agent, so your system emails get sent to your personal email or something like that. I haven't implemented it, so you don't really have to use it, but at some point I will use it. I do have this implemented in my web server and other places. I just haven't integrated into Deployrr yet. So let's leave that for now. So this is the end of the systems menu. Okay, let's now go to the next step, which is to the next menu on Deployrr. So that would be the Docker menu. So let me type in my password. There you go. So next would be the Docker menu. So before we move forward, just notice that you have some information printed on top as well. You're in export mode right now. Then in the Docker mode, it's better to create a Docker login. Okay, so it's in fact it's quite easy to do that. I'm not going to do it here because you will have to type in your Docker. Actually, when I install it, it's going to provide a link, and I'll have to open that link and log in to my Docker account on docker.com. By linking your Docker account, you have higher limits in terms of how many images you can pull from the Docker repository. So from that point, it's useful, but it is optional. So I'm going to skip it right now. On my home server and media server, web server, I am logged into my Docker account. Okay, so let's start with the socket proxy. If you don't know what these things mean, I highly recommend that you go back into my Docker media server guide and go through some of the steps. I guess this one would be under port 14, which is the Docker media server, the Kickass Docker media server with 150 apps. This is where all of these are explained, so I won't explain, but socket proxy is highly recommended for any apps that will need direct access to Docker socket. It adds additional protection, some level of protection, so it's recommended. So we're going to do a socket proxy right now. So I'm going to go, this is This message also explains what I basically said. So read through some of the messages that are displayed. Don't just keep hitting next and moving through. I try to give a message or through every now and then just to teach some basic concept. Even some of the information that is being printed here is quite important. You will learn a lot of things. For example, unprivileged LXC. So disabling privileged mode on the Docker Compose. So that means there is a privileged mode option with socket proxy that is being disabled because that won't work in our unprivileged LXC environment. Just things like that it's helpful to pay attention if you really want to learn. Okay, so this is done. Socket proxy is running. So we're going to go back to the menu right now and then go to the next step, which is the Deployrr dashboard. So as you start adding more and more apps, I try to find an automated way to keep track of all the apps that are installed, what ports they're using, all of that, so you don't have to remember them. That's why I implemented Deployrr dashboard. So it is based on homepage, so I'm not really inventing something new here. So kudos to them for developing that. So I'm basically using what they have done with homepage here. So let's install that. This again is optional. If you don't want to, then it's okay. But keep in mind, again, read through the instructions that are shown on your screen. It works only for apps that are part of the official Deployrr apps list. By that I mean this works automatically for those apps. If you install an app that is not on the official list, then you will have to add the app manually to your dashboard if you want it there. So that's what it means. But we'll see later on in this video series, we'll see how to add apps manually to your dashboard. So for now, we're going to go hit proceed and let it do its thing. It's going to take some time because homepage usually takes a few minutes to start. Okay, so we're going to use the default port. Once again, read through the information that's presented. I'm not going to look at that. I think we'll cross easily 2.5 hours for this video. So I don't want to be stuck here for a long time. So let's wait for this to complete. Hopefully it's done very soon. And there you go. So now the container is being created, and now Deployrr checks if the container starts. It did start. So next, adding Deployrr dashboard to the Deployrr dashboard. So the app is now added. So this link should be available on the dashboard. So as I said, the dashboard, which is based on homepage, does take some time to start. But in this case, it looks like it did start. So here's the dashboard that was created automatically for you. The first app that we installed is already listed here under the local section. You also see the socket proxy app that was already installed. So you can, if you click on the running icon here, you will see some metrics as well. But in case you didn't know, that's how homepage works. I do have some basic links here if you decide to become a member and really support what I do, which I really appreciate, by the way. That's really what keeps me going and pays for the video editing cost, which if you don't know, it's a lot. I've spent thousands on my YouTube videos, whereas YouTube makes like $50 a month from ad revenue, and my expenses are more than 3,000-4,000 at this point for YouTube. So but these memberships are what are paying for those things. So if you decide to support, please do become a member, and Deployrr is included in some of the memberships, so take a look at that. But you also have links to my repository, and you can click on that. Here on my repository, you will find my real production setup. As I just said, last week or 5 days back, I moved my home lab to a Deployrr based setup. As I just said in the intro, you can see all of these files were pushed 4 or 5 days back, and this is my real setup that I'm running on my home server and web server and all the places. You also have links to my YouTube channel, a few other things. It's there. Feel free to change it. If you don't like it, you can even remove it if you know how to customize homepage. So here we are. So that's done. Let's go back in here. I'm going to skip over the UFW Docker and these two parts. These two are experimental. I don't know of many people that use it, so we'll skip over that. You have some other features. So right now I can see the usage, disk usage. I'm using about 271 megabytes of disk, which is not a lot, but as you install more and more apps, and in fact, when you update apps, the older images still get left behind on your system, and this keeps occupying more and more space, and beyond a certain point you might find that you have 50 gigabytes of obsolete, useless Docker images. So if that happens, then you have the cleanup option here. You can go in here and hit cleanup, and that should automatically safely clean up all the unused Docker images and the volumes and things like that. Right now we're clean here, so nothing has been cleaned, so nothing was done. The next step is a traffic reverse proxy, which is one of the most complex things, as you might know, and probably one of the reasons why you're actually using Deployrr, because it automates everything for you. So let's start with traffic reverse proxy. So if I go into the reverse proxy menu, the exposure mode is set to simple. Now this is where you have port 80 from the router forwarded to port 80 on the Docker host, 443 to 443. What this does is that exposes all the apps that are behind traffic to the internet. So you will be able to access all of your apps that are behind your traffic. Now, if you want more granular control, where some apps are only accessible internally, some externally, some both, then you need the advanced mode where port 80 is forwarded to 81, 443 to 444. Now this is all explained in my Ultimate Docker Media Server Guide part number 18, which deals with traffic. So go read that. I won't go into the details here, but if you remember, in my OPNsense we forwarded 80 to 81, 443 to 444. We also want to manage our exposure, so with traffic. So we're going to go into to advanced mode here. So there are more details. Please feel free to read it. In fact, please read it, because many of the things that I just mentioned verbally are also explained right here. And once again, another point that's mentioned here is hairpinning. For the advanced mode to work properly, you need DNS hairpinning or Split-DNS or a local DNS. We use the local DNS on my AdGuard home to point all the domains to the local IP. So that is needed for it to work. So we did that already. Okay, so then we're going to go into preparation and start. There are requirements. We took care of it already in the requirements section. We have the API token with proper permissions. We have the domain name. We have Cloudflare as the DNS manager. So we're good there. Once again, there's a reference here. Anytime you have questions, please go to the reference document or article. Everything will be explained there with pictures and all of that stuff. So we're going to proceed now. You will have to create a basic HTTP auth username and password. This is a basic authentication, meaning it's not very secure. It's good to have. So we're going to start with that, but then eventually transition over to something more advanced like Authelia. Okay, so let's do that right now. So I'm going to use Anand for username. For password, something complex, obviously better, but now I'm going to use just Anand. The scoped API token, which we created previously, I have it in my notepad, so I'm going to copy that right now. Don't worry, it's just a temporary one. I will delete it after. Hopefully I remember. Okay, there you go. So the deployer checks if the code is actually valid for you, or the token is already is valid for you. Then it creates Docker secrets, which I would show you where it is. Actually, if you read my Docker guide, it's explained there. It's already getting too long for this guide, so I won't explain what it is, but the credentials that we provided were converted into a Docker secret and stored. The port availability was checked because we need all those 4 ports free, and that was done. Tag port 80 for the traffic dashboard was also checked. Some middlewares and middleware chains were created. If you do not know what these things are, I highly recommend that you read my traffic guide, Ultimate Docker Media Server part 18. Everything is explained there. If something goes wrong, you need that knowledge to troubleshoot and fix things. There's also the log file location here, which is also important to familiarize yourself with if anything goes wrong. In fact, something will go wrong today because I planned it in my script. So when that happens, we're going to go take a look at the traffic log. And many times when you hop onto my Discord server and ask for support, we will ask you for this log file, and you need to know how to retrieve it and add it into our Discord server. Okay, so those things are important, so don't ignore them. Familiarize yourself. Deployrr is not an alternative to reading the guides that I have on my website. It's not a manager for your home lab. Please remember that. I know I keep repeating it, but it's important. Okay, so we're ready for staging right now. Staging is where we sort of do a trial run to see if we are able to get the SSL certificate from Let's Encrypt or not, because a lot of times things can go wrong. And if you keep bombarding the Let's Encrypt servers, you will get banned from it for 24 hours or 72 hours, I can't remember. And then you have to wait until that time has passed to retry. We don't want to do that. So staging is very important. So we're going to start with staging right now. So let's stage. Now Deployrr will do a lot of things in the background, like creating the blank certificate file, checking to make sure if the staging server is already enabled in the Docker Compose file. There's a lot of useful things that happen or is presented as information in the screen. Please take your time to read through it. It's going to go through many steps right now. Eventually it might fail or it might even not work. So we're going to wait for some time and then I'm going to come back in here. But before that, let me show you what these messages mean right here. So staging server, what does that mean? So you go into the compose folder. Sorry if you cannot see well, the text is too small, but essentially I'm opening the Traefik compose file that Deployrr created for me. It's right here. If I scroll down, this line right here has to be enabled when you're doing a staging. So Deployrr did that for me automatically. So when we do production, this will be commented out automatically. So that's exactly what's happening. So it's very important for you to understand what happens in the background. Okay, so for now, let's let Deployrr run. It says it could take up to 15 minutes. In this case, I think it's going to take longer, and I know the reason why, but I want to troubleshoot and show you how to troubleshoot, and that's why I'm gonna let this run. Come back in a few minutes. Okay, so hang tight. Okay, I am back, and here you can see that actually the run failed as expected. So this is what I knew that this was going to happen, and again I wanted to show you how to fix it, because a lot of times people overlook certain things, and this happens in the background. They're asking for questions on Discord server, and we'll have to explain how to get the logs and troubleshoot and things like that. And this is also where we will actually use some of the bash aliases that we created previously. So in this case, I know it failed. Unable to obtain Acme certificate. I don't know what that means. Why did that happen? So possibly wrong Cloudflare API key. That could be the case, but the key was valid as the script checked in the beginning. So what's happening here? Then the permissions could be wrong, which is the zone read or zone DNS edit was set incorrectly. That could have happened. I know in this case that was really not right, or I went back and checked. Let's assume that I went back and checked. The next fix, if you have an advanced firewall, UDM or OPNsense, etc., disable ad blocking or suspicious activity blocking or bypass it for the Docker host. Actually, since the time in the next version of Deployrr, this will be updated. There could be another reason why this step failed, which is if OPNsense was configured to hijack all the DNS requests that go on port 53 and make it be answered by its own DNS server, which is unbound. If that happens, then the DNS validation for Traefik cannot happen successfully. So in this case, what needs to be done is that the DNS request that's originating from the Docker host has to be bypassed for this step to be to go through successfully, right? So that's what is happening in the background. I'm going to show you how to do that, but before we do that, let's use some of the bash aliases to figure out how we can go through this information, right? Because you need to provide something more meaningful when you're like Googling for answers or using ChatGPT or Gemini to get your questions answered, right? And so if I do dps, which is sudo docker ps, it shows me all the containers that are running. Right now, Traefik is running. So I want to see Traefik logs. And if I do Traefik logs, which is the alias that instead of a lengthy command, that is going to show me the logs from Traefik. So if I scroll up, I can see the most recent ones. Usually this is what I might ask you to do, because if you DC logs and put the container name, you can see the logs of the container. In fact, if I do DC logs socket proxy, I should be able to see what the recent logs of socket proxy. But in this case, we need Traefik. there is some information here that can actually tell me what might have gone wrong. In this case right here, could not find zone Anand's lab in Cloudflare. That's exactly what's happening. So I know this is a DNS issue. So when you see port numbers, that's usually 53, that's usually a DNS issue right here as well. DNS call error. So it already gives me some information that I can look up on the internet. But what I can also do is look at the log file. Where is the log file? So if I go into the Docker folder, Deployrr automatically creates the log files for you. So right here in the logs folder, traffic folder, you have access log and traffic log. If I open the traffic log, I'm going to see the full log right here from the time traffic started all the way down. This is something usually that's very helpful to troubleshoot. And I know there's some information related to DNS error here. So something like that. Okay, never mind. I couldn't find it. But anyway, I showed you what might be going on. So that gave me the hint to go into my OPNsense. Hopefully I still have it open here. So in my OPNsense, I have this firewall rule right here that captures all port number 53 requests, which is the DNS request, redirects the request to the internal DNS resolver, which is unbound, right? So right now it say there is an exception. If the traffic originates from my home server, then follow this rule. But unfortunately, then my home server, this still works, but I created a new unprivileged LXC, which is what is trying to request or do the DNS challenge, and that IP is not listed here. So if I go in, open up that alias list, don't worry if this is all too complex. If you use OPNsense or pfSense, this might make sense. But if you're using UDM, you already have certain level of competency to handle this, so I wouldn't be too worried. And if you're on a simple router, an ISP router where you don't have to deal with things like that, because those you won't have problems like this. Okay, so I'm going to add 192.168.5.113, which is the IP address of my the unprivileged LXC. So I added that to the list now. So now if I go back in here and I'm going to start traffic back up or staging again, hopefully this time it goes through. Let's see here. Okay. Once again, I might just jump off and wait for it to be done. I'm going to start staging here. Okay. While that's happening, I'm going to go back in here and look up my firewall rules. Okay, I have that. I want to make sure. Yeah. So when I highlight that, you can see that there are two IPs that are now being displayed. So we're good there. So let me go back to the output from Deployrr. Hopefully this time it goes through, but I'm gonna come back when it is done. All right, I'm back. Now here you see the messages on your screen right there. This time the messages are quite different. You see a message for waiting for DNS propagation. The server validated the request. All of these things are positive signs, obviously, because the process went through successfully. So we identified the issue. So what did we learn from this is, first, to see if traffic is running. So if we do DPS, you can see all the running containers. Traffic is running right now. Then if I do traffic logs, then I see the recent logs from traffic, or I can open up the traffic.log. That's also possible. So just very simple things. Now, if I need to recreate traffic, I could do other stuff. If I need to stop traffic, I could use another alias, but we're not going to do that right now. We'll deal with those things later. But for now, it's very important to know how to get to the log file and use it. Now, I'm going to go back into Deployrr so I can show you something. So now, if you want, you can create a sanitized log in traffic. If you go into settings, there is a logs option. So this would allow you to create a sanitized log, meaning all the sensitive information like your IP and all of that stuff are removed before creating a log, and you can upload this log for support on Discord server. Okay, there you go. So I won't go too much into detail of that one. You can, let's go back to what we were actually doing, which is traffic. So now staging went through successfully. So at this point, I could go to my Deployrr dashboard right here. Let's see if it's still running. Yeah, it is running, but you don't see traffic here yet because it hasn't been added. I programmed Deployrr in such a way that when everything goes through, then it appears here. So, but we're gonna copy paste this URL, and I'm gonna use 8080, which is the port number for Traefik. Now I see that that Traefik is working and it's running, but it's still on staging, which means if I go to traefik.uninstall.com, it shouldn't work. Okay, well, it works, but then you see the not secure warning. That's because we're using the insecure certificate. And in fact, if you have HSTS turned on Cloudflare settings, you won't even be able to access it without a proper certificate. It works, but you don't have the right certificate. So that's what we're gonna fix right now. So let's run production. And we're going to essentially go through the same steps. Deployrr is going to do the same thing. Now, instead of reaching the staging servers, it's going to reach out to the production servers to get the certificate. So I'm going to pause once again right here, let it go through its stuff and come back when it has completed the steps. I would be highly surprised if it doesn't go through successfully, because staging was successful. All right, I'm back. So, as expected, the production process went through successfully as well. The server validated the request. Real certificates were found. Okay, the process is not done yet, but okay, so I'll get back to that. But what's happening here is that since the process completed successfully, Deployrr is automatically trying to add Deployrr dashboard that we created previously behind Traefik, so you can use your domain names to access your Deployrr dashboard. So we're going to do that right now. So I'll just call it Deployrr. Okay, and you even get an option to enable authentication, which I strongly recommend. So we're going to choose the basic authentication. It is discouraged use, but that's the only option we have right now. So we're going to pick basic. Now, since we have the advanced traffic exposure mode with being able to control internal, external, both, etc., we have all three options available right now. So I'm just going to choose both right now. Now, going back to this again, so you can see that the real certificates were obtained. They are in acme.json file. So that's a good thing. So I will show you where to find that. I'm going to exit out of this right now so it doesn't crawl away from me. So there you go. And then you have the log level now set to info. Previously it was in debug, and that's a lot of information. Now that we know everything works, we don't really need to collect that much information, and Deployrr automatically changes the log level for you to info on Traefik. So really, I thought about a lot of details when I was creating Deployrr. I mean, obviously this is based on my experience over the last 7 years or so of using Traefik. So all of that have been taken into account while I created this. Of course, when you fall, this is why I keep saying that you will not find such a well-rounded set of resources with my blog and my YouTube videos and Deployrr and all of that working together. Plus you have the Discord server when you have any trouble. So you will not find such a system or a set of resources for you to help you through the process. So please consider becoming a member if you're not already a member. So if you are, once again, thank you. You really have my appreciation for that. Okay, so going back here, then traffic production was complete. Then you can see where it's available at. You have Traefik dashboard that was added to Deployrr dashboard. There's a lot of things that happen in the background. So right now, let's go back in here. Now, if I refresh this, hopefully now I see the login screen because I don't see that error anymore. You remember the basic username and password we set, which was both Anand and Anand. That should take me to Traefik dashboard, and you don't see the not secure warning anymore. So if I click on that and go view the certificate, I'm going to see the real certificate from Let's Encrypt. So everything is working perfectly right now. Now, if I go to the dashboard, Deployrr dashboard, you can now see all the apps that were installed, their local URL with the port name, their remote URL with the fully qualified domain name. Everything is here. I think we just saved a lot of time. I hope you guys realize how easy Deployrr makes everything. Whether you're learning or an experienced user, I am an experienced user and I still recreate my servers a lot of times using Deployrr because it just makes my life so much more easier. Okay, so that was Traefik production. We finished that part successfully. Let's move on to the next step. So let's open Deployrr again and go back to the Traefik menu or reverse proxy menu to see what else is out there. And there you go. And now reverse proxy. You can see that Traefik production is running version 3.3.7. We have the exposure part where we have one app that's exposed both internally and externally. There's one app that is behind Traefik right now, which is Deployrr dashboard, which is exactly what's exposed both internally and externally. We have a few other options, but before we move forward, let's check, because Deployrr dashboard is available right here. So when I click on that, it's going to ask me for the username and password because it's behind basic authentication. There you go. Now you can access the Deployrr dashboard using the fully qualified domain name. And then we have manage exposure. So, well, actually, before I move to that, how is Deployrr dashboard behind Traefik? We use file providers for that. If you do not know what that means, once again, go back and read my Traefik guide. Everything is explained over there. But I'm going to go just into the Docker folder here and app data and Traefik rules, and Deployrr is the host name. Here you can see app Deployrr dashboard. That's the file provider. That's what is putting Deployrr dashboard behind Traefik. So every app that you expose using Traefik, there's going to be a file provider like that. Now this is what is called Trafikify in Deployrr's terminology right here. Trafikify. It allows you to put an app behind Traefik. Now, when that app is an app officially supported by Deployrr, it happens automatically. When you're adding your own app, you will have to use this option to put it behind Traefik. So we will see this in a bit more detail actually. So likewise, you also have on Trafikify, so you can remove apps from being exposed using Traefik. That's also possible. We won't go through that. There's a domain pass-through option. For example, you have two different domains. You can set up a pass-through on your main Traefik instance. For example, if this were the main Traefik instance, I have another domain that is on a Traefik instance in another machine in my home network, then I can pass through that domain. This again is explained in detail in the Ultimate Docker Media Server series, or there is a video on it as well on my YouTube channel. Check those things out. There's a way to bypass authentication. I won't cover that here. It's not fully implemented yet, so don't worry about it right now. For now, I think this is good enough for Traefik. Now, before we move forward, I will just cover the manage exposure part, which is, I said we have one app that's exposed both internally and externally. There is some warnings here. Please be sure to read those. This only works, manage exposure only works if the app was installed using Deployrr. If you add it manually, you have to follow all the Deployrr standards or else it's not going to work. So for now, I'm going to proceed. Yes, and here is the first app. Deployrr dashboard is exposed currently both internally and externally, and I have the option to change it to internal or external. So if I do external, for example, I'm going to just try it right now. I've never done it this way, so it's now external. The change is immediate. So if I go back here and if I try to refresh, let's see if it works. Yep, 404, it's not working. Why? Because this app is exposed only internally. I have to be outside my home network for me to be able to access this. I bet if I turn on my hotspot on my mobile and connect my laptop to it, I should be able to access it. That's the difference. Likewise, the reverse is also true. I will change it back to both internally and externally. So that's done. So you know what manage exposure means now. Okay, so we're actually done with the Traefik or the reverse proxy menu side of things. Okay, Okay, the next big one is security. When we did the Traefik basic authentication, I mentioned that basic authentication is okay, but it can be broken. It's not secure. This is why there are some additional options inside the security menu. You can install Authelia, Authentic, Google OAuth, TinyAuth, manage your authentication method. All of this is possible. In addition, you have some additional security apps like CrowdSec. I don't think we will have time to look at CrowdSec as a part of this video, because I'm guessing this is going to be already 3 hours long after I finish editing it. For now, we're just going to install Authelia as an authentication method. Now, when you go through each one of those authentication methods, you will see instructions on what you need to do. In fact, if you go back to my, if you go back here, I already have an authentic Docker Compose guide on my website, and that explains everything that that you should do if you want to do it manually. Now, if I go back to the UDMS series and look at Authentic, for example, let's see here, right here, I already have a video on Authentic. So when you watch this video, in fact, it is based on Deployrr. So exactly what happens when you use Deployrr to install Authentic is available in that video. So check it out. I'm going to skip that. I'm going to use Authelia. Once again, there's another video on Authelia as well, but I have to show you something. So I'm going to do Authelia this time. Okay. I think last time I did Google OAuth. And in fact, that's actually what I use mostly because I'm logged into Google all the time. So it helps. For now, I'm going to do Authelia. Okay. So let's do that. So it says the requirements are not met. Redis is not installed. So I have to go back and install Redis. So you can see that you can just keep going through various steps. And if you're missing something, Deployrr will tell you what's missing. So you can go back and redo that. So I'm going to go back to the apps menu now for the first time. We haven't seen this yet. So let's go to apps menu. I'm going to go to Redis. If you didn't know, you could just hit the R key and it takes you already directly to the to the apps that start with R, the letter R. So here's Redis. So let's install Redis. Don't worry about it. There's no password on Redis. So for now, it should be okay. So that's the thing. So the apps menu, we haven't covered it yet, but we need Redis. So we'll come back to the apps menu later on. For now, we're installing Redis because it's a requirement for Authelia, right? So let it be done. And then we're going to go back to installing Authelia. Okay, so Redis is done and it shows you where it's available and everything. So let's not worry about it. So we're going to go back now. In fact, if I go to Deployrr dashboard right now, it should update and show me Redis is already running. Amazing. Okay, so let's go back in here. Let's go back to security and start Authelia back up again. Now, username. So we'll have to give a strong username and password. I'm going to use a simple one. And once again, just for sake of it, because I will destroy this instance after we're done. Now you have to enter a name. If you want to give a name that has 2 words in it, use an underscore here, because if you give a space in between, that can cause issues. So I will say Anand and simple home lab for name. Okay, and you have to give the email. Now this email really will not be used for anything, so you can give a dummy email. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to just say a@a.com and that should be done. Now in the background, Deployrr is already creating all the required configuration files. You can see them here, right here, the configuration.yaml file, the JWT secret, and many secret files. In fact, Authelia requires a lot of them. Everything is being created automatically, including Traefik middleware chains, everything. There's a lot that's happening in the background. So in fact, if you follow the guide on Authelia or the video, you will see how many steps there are to get to where we want to get to, and Deployrr just makes it so easy to set up the whole thing. So let's wait for it to be done. You are getting some instructions right here. So I'm going to exit out right now so we can read the instructions. Authelia was set up successfully. Authelia is available right here. Since SMTP requires manual configuration outside Deployrr, all Authelia emails will be saved here, which is this folder, notifications.txt. Open the text file and use the OTP code to complete the registration of the device. Now, the OTP code is not available yet. Okay, so don't be surprised if you open that notifications.txt file and don't see anything. That's not because we haven't, that's because we haven't registered any device yet. So we're gonna open this, and right here we have the login. Okay, so we're gonna use the same username and password that we provided before. I'm gonna say remember me and then sign in. So the login went through, and you now have the opportunity to register your device, as you can see in right here. So we're going to click on register device, which gives you two options: one-time password or the other one. So we're going to use the one-time password. When you click on that, you're being asked for the one-time password notification, or the code. Now this notification is what goes into your notifications.txt file, since we don't have a web server or mail server configured. So we're going to go back to Mobaxterm and go on. You could also do this in command line if you know what you're doing, but so let's go back to the app data and Authelia folder. Here you have the notifications.txt file, so I'm going to open that one, and it's open right here. And right here you see the code, the one-time password code. Okay, so I'm going to copy that, head over here, paste that code, and verify. And there you go. So we've now verified the device. Now we can actually set up the two-factor authentication. So the next, we're going to see a QR code to register. So I'm going to open up my authentication app here and scan the QR code so we can register the device. Okay, so right here, let me scan. There you go. So I saved it. Now let's hit the next step and punch in the code 688788. There you go. So that's it. So now we've registered Authelia. We aren't really using Authelia for any of the services yet, because we're still using basic authentication. So this is where manage authentication option comes in handy. So we're going to go in here and to the security menu, and we're going to go to manage auth. Okay, so here once again the same messages as you saw previously with this manage exposure options under Traefik, or the Trafikify option, which we haven't seen yet. It works when the app was installed using Deployrr. If not, you will have to make sure that all the Deployrr standards are followed, or the ultimate Docker media server standards are followed, or else this is not going to work. So for now, we're going to hit yes and continue. And here you see Deployrr dashboard has basic authentication. Traefik has basic authentication. So now let's change those. I'm going to hit Deployrr dashboard. Now I'm going to change it to the recommended Authelia one. So that's done. Now we're going to change Traefik to Authelia. So both of them are done. Now these things some of them will need to be recreated, some of them not. There are reasons behind why some need to be recreated. I won't go into that right now. So let's wait for Traefik to be done. And now if we try to access Traefik dashboard, we are going to be, our Deployrr dashboard, we're going to be asked for the password. Okay, there you go. I'm being asked for my one-time passcode. Because I'm already logged in, I said remember me, so it remembers me, or else you will have to supply the username and password again. So right now I'm going to type in the OTP one, and that's it. There you go. So now Traefik dashboard is being protected with Authelia. So if I go back to my Deployrr dashboard, once again, it's also protected by Authelia because I'm logged in into my other tab. This went through automatically. Wow. So there you go. So now you have Authelia. Likewise, you can go through and install Authentic, Google OAuth, whichever one that jives with you. Google OAuth uses traffic forward authentication. It's an older image at this point. It hasn't been updated quite regularly, but I already found a replacement. I have it in my production or my home server. Eventually, this will be included or be updated in Deployrr as well. So watch out for that. Okay. So we won't go through CrowdSec. You can read about it on my website. There are many articles. So let's be done with the security part of the menu. Next is the apps menu. This is the fun part. So Deployrr right now supports 150 apps. I keep adding 1 or 2 every time I release a new version, but eventually I would even find a way to include community apps. So let's say if you decide to add an app that works with the Deployrr, then you can add the configuration for this app into the GitHub repository of Deployrr. This is not in place yet, but this is the idea that I have right now. So we'll see, maybe in version 6 or version 7, I will come back to this. I'll try to add this. For now, let's go into apps menu. As I said, we have about 150 apps, or actually 145 to be correct. So let's install a few apps. Let's start with Adminer. So Adminer is a web UI for databases, many different databases. You can see how simple it is to install Adminer. So Deployrr will automatically find a port that is free for you. It will offer you, because Adminer runs by default on port 8080. Deployrr checks and sees that port 8080 is occupied, and it gives you another option, which is the nearest one, 8081. So really a lot of checks and balances have gone into building Deployrr. It's not visible on the outside, but 12,000 lines of code, there's a lot that people don't see. So Adminer is done. Now Traefik is running, so Deployrr offers you to see if you want to add Adminer behind Traefik or not. You can skip. You can have Deployrr or Adminer exposed only internally using IP address and port. But Traefik is running. Our idea is to expose apps using Traefik, so we're going to say yes. And now you're being asked for the subdomain. I just want to call it Adminer, so adminer.untinslab.com. That's going to be the full domain, so let's leave it at that. Now that we have Authelia available, so that's being offered to us, which is the recommended option, so we're going to go with Authelia, and I'm going to expose it both internally and externally. So there will be some checks that happen in the background. Sometimes this fails, sometimes this works. Don't worry too much about it right now. Obviously, right now, Deployrr was able to find Adminer running on this Docker host IP address. Don't worry too much about it. You won't be using this IP address. This is the Docker host IP address in the Docker network. It's not really the address that we would be using to access the apps. So don't worry about that. Your details are right here. These are the URLs that you would be using to access. So if I go back to Deployrr dashboard, you see Adminer and you see Adminer right here. So when I click on this, I should already see the login page for Adminer. Great. So let's try another one. Most of you are setting up a home lab to have some kind of a media app in there. So let's try a media app. Let's try Jellyfin. So I'm going to go to Jellyfin right here. And the process starts already. The compose file is being fetched from the repository, and you saw in the messages that media folders were added automatically. The GPU was added automatically for hardware transcoding. We'll see that, and port 8096 is free, so it was already picked. Here you go, adding GPU device for hardware acceleration. Everything happens automatically. So you don't really, now this goes back to the systems menu where we added the GPU, if you remember. So when that is enabled, Deployrr is smart enough to figure out, okay, I need to enable GPU for the apps that need it. So that will be automatically enabled for you. Same is the case for MB, same is the case for Plex. Okay, so waiting for Jellyfin to start, and let's wait for it to be done, and we should be ready. Jellyfin is a big app, so it takes some time to start. So while it's doing that, so let's go back here. Here you can see all the folders that were automatically created for Jellyfin and Authelia and Traefik. So Adminer doesn't have any configuration files, so you don't really see a folder for that. Now, if I go back into app data and Traefik and rules, you're going to see all the apps that had file providers created to expose them using Traefik. So Adminer, Deployrr dashboard are the two that have file providers right now. So Jellyfin to start. I probably picked the wrong app. Jellyfin can take a long time to start. So let's give it a few more seconds. I'll pause here. I'll come back when it's done. Okay, Jellyfin didn't finish installing. It's stuck in that place. And I'm glad it also happens, because now I can show you how to troubleshoot that. So I'm going to open another session right here to the same server. So let me zoom in a bit. Now, once again, we're going to use my bash aliases to see what's going on. So Jellyfin is not starting. So let's do DC logs Jellyfin. So basically, we're seeing the Jellyfin container logs. So type in the password, and there you go. Well, I see some errors here already, and I can actually do DC rec, which is recreate Jellyfin, right? And then DC logs Jellyfin, right? So then I can see the entire error. So really, it seems to be that error. That's it. So access to this path is denied. It's a permissions error issue. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go to cd docker and app data. So if I do ls-al, I see the Jellyfin folder, but unfortunately it seems to be owned by root, and that's probably the problem, because the Docker version of Jellyfin is running with the username Anand, and it doesn't have right permissions to Jellyfin folder here. So if I do sudo chown -r recursively Anand Jellyfin, now the whole folder is being owned by me. So now if I go back in here, look at that. It all, as soon as I changed the permissions, the process went through. So now Jellyfin was already added to Deployrr dashboard. I do want to add it behind Traefik, so I'm gonna add it behind Traefik. Let's call it Jellyfin with the Authelia as the authentication, exposed both internally and externally. So let's wait for it to be done. We don't really need this right now, so I'm gonna exit out of this one right here. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so it's stopping and recreating Jellyfin. That really does not matter right now. So if I go back to my Deployrr dashboard, I should see Jellyfin as well. So then it's still in exited status, so let's wait for it to start. Okay, now it started, so it's starting, as you can see here. So if I click on this one, I should see Jellyfin right there. Now we can start the server and get the we can add a server and get the process started. All it took was 2 hours to start from a blank server, have Docker installed, Traefik installed, Jellyfin, a bunch of different apps, put the apps behind Traefik reverse proxy, add Authelia for authentication and for security, all in less than 2 hours. Isn't that amazing? Okay, let's do another app. Let's do Dozzle this time. Dozzle is useful for viewing logs of containers. So we're gonna do Dozzle and let Deployrr do its thing. This will be the last one. I don't want to install a bunch of different apps. Once again, you see the port that's free that's being offered to you as the option right there. So let's wait for it to be done. Now, you can go through the entire list of apps and install the ones that you like at this point, put them behind Traefik and enable Authelia for them. You know the process. Adding apps from the list is quite easy. You also saw how to troubleshoot, because Jellyfin didn't start properly, and so I'm glad that happened. Now you know how to go back and troubleshoot. So when this is done, we're going to be done with the apps part of it. I'll go into some of the other options, because one of the common questions you guys ask is how do I add a non-supported app. So let's go back to the Docker or Deployrr dashboard right now. I see Dozzle, so I'm going to click on this one. There you go. I see Dozzle open up in a new window. We use the local IP, that's going to open up as well. So we're done with the apps part of it. The only thing I would show you is if I go back to Deployrr right here and look at the list of apps, you will see all the apps that are running. Plus, you will also see whether that's an internal or external or both. In this case, adminer is both internal and external, and it's behind Authelia, so you see that as well in the apps list, which is really nice because you get a very quick view of what app is running and how it is exposed. So there you see Dozzle as well. If you scroll all the way down to R, you should see Redis as well, but in the case of Redis, it's a local app, it's not exposed, so you see that it's local. So that's how the apps menu works. So now you know the process to follow to install the apps that are officially supported. One of the most common questions you guys have is how do I add an app that's not officially supported? So let's look at an example. Okay, so if you're familiar with Docker and the content of the UDMS series, you should be at home. You should feel like you're at home and you know how things work and everything. So if you do not know that, I recommend that you read my articles or watch my videos on it so you understand. But I'm going to show you how to add an app that is not on the list. For example, if I go to hub.docker.com and look for an app that I want to add, or you find the Docker compose of an app somewhere in the internet, let's say I want to add Packard, which is the music app or music tagging app. So I want that one, and I see the Docker command right here. Do I see a Docker compose? Yes, I see a Docker compose here as well. So it needs a little bit of modification, right? It's not going to work as is. So this is one way. You could also go into because there are some environmental variables. You need to decide which ones you want, which one you don't want, and all of that stuff. So it's going to take a while to figure this out. So you will have to get the basic Docker compose from here, figure out which environment variables you want to have and all of that. Or you could go into my GitHub repository. I don't have all the apps, but I do have more apps than what's on Deployrr. So if I go to github.com/simplehomlab and Docker Traefik, here, if I go into compose, and I'm going to go into my home server because I know I have more apps there than, for example, right here, Pickard. Okay, so here is the compose file. Basically, this is, I got it out of the Docker Hub. I created this compose file with all the details. So I'm going to copy this, and we're going to use this as a template. Let's assume that you have Docker compose from somewhere else as an example right here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the compose folder right on our Docker folder or inside our Docker folder and create a new file right here that's going to be called packard.html, and I'm going to open that one and copy the contents that I just copied over, right? So here's now what's important is that it follows the Deployrr standards. I highly recommend. It's not required, but highly recommended. This is why sometimes what we can do is that you could use AI for this. For example, if you have ChatGPT, you copy one of the compose files from let's say Jellyfin and paste it into ChatGPT and say that, hey, look, I have this template, but I want to add Packard. Here's the compose I got from the internet. Can you adapt it and make it look very similar to the Jellyfin Docker compose file? And then you should get something very similar to this as a starting point. So here I have the different options I normally have in every compose file. It's a media app, so it has the profile of media, and it also belongs under all apps. Again, if you don't know what Docker profiles are, you should read my Docker Media Server Guide, part 14, I think. Then it belongs to the default network, the port. So we're creating a variable Packard_port, and the port inside the Docker container is 5800. We are not going to change that at all. I modified the paths so Packard configuration is created inside the app data folder. The right side of it remains the same, because if I go back in here and go to where did I open it? Right here, because the rest of it is going to be pretty much exactly how it is right here. You can see the only thing we need to add is the storage folder, which is the path to the music on the left. So what did I do here? I don't have it here, so you could modify it. Because I tag my music in my downloads before it moves. It's moved to the final destination. So that's why I have the downloads folder here in my home server. You could change the path to whatever. It doesn't have to be /storage like in the other Docker compose. It could be anything as long as you have this path that this path to use inside Packard when you open the application. And then I have some RAM passing through for some speed of operation. The environment variables that were available were listed here, the ones that I thought are useful to me. And then finally, what I have is the last placeholder. So Deployrr knows when it needs to add some Docker labels. This is the place where it goes. So I have a placeholder for that. You don't have to add it, but if you want to follow the standard, you need it. So we created that folder right now, but what's missing is the downloads directory. We didn't set the downloads directory, if you remember. So if I start right now, I will probably see an error. Okay, I will probably see an error. So before I do that, let's do one more thing. We created the Docker compose file, but we haven't called it in our main Docker compose file right here, the index file with the list of all the apps. So you'll have to add the app right here, post slash host name slash picard.yml. Okay, so this is, so we added the compose file to the main index file. So once again, we created the compose inside the compose folder, then we opened the index Docker compose file and we added Picard to that list. So now we have the app added to the list. So if I exit out of this, and I can use dc up, which is Docker compose up alias for the big long command, which I won't go into right now, or I could use dc rec like we used in the past, which is dc recreate Picard, and I should see an error. See right there, Picard port variable is not set. So I interrupted and got out, right? So we need to create that. So how do we do that? I'm going to elevate myself or go into the Docker folder and do an ls-al. You will see that env file. So we have to open up the env file, sudo nano.env, go all the way down right there. And like you have for Dozzle, we'll have to add the Picard port variable. Make sure the variable name matches what's in the compose file. So I'm going to do 5800. We need to make sure that this port is free. So I think I'll show you how to do that. And then you press Ctrl X, Y, and exit. So that is saved right now. So I forgot what is the alias for ports. Oh, that's the one. So ports. So another Docker alias or bash alias that's built into what is installed by Deployrr. So things that make it really easy. So when you say ports, you see a list of all the ports that are being used. But then I'm going to do ports and grep for 5800, which is what I used. Now I don't get any result, which means 5800 is free. But let me do 8081, for example. I know that's already used, so I should get an answer for that. You see, I got an answer. So you have to look for a port that doesn't return any result. So in this case, 5800 is free, so we're good to go. Then now I'm ready to recreate Picard. And now if I want to follow the logs, I could also do dc rec Picard and semicolon dc logs Picard. So that would give me the logs as well. As soon as the container is created, I'll start following the logs. That's another way to keep track of make sure that the container starts well. You could also go to your Dozzle instance, which we have right here, and then see if Picard is right here. So it hasn't appeared here yet because it's probably being pulled still. So we're almost there now. Okay, there you go. So Picard has been created. Now you would notice that you didn't see that it was added to the Deployrr dashboard or that it's behind Traefik yet. So if you go to your dashboard, you won't find it because it's not an official app, or official Deployrr app. So you have to add it manually, which I'll get to right now. So in Dozzle now you can see Picard already appeared. You can click on it and you can see all the log messages here. So I think Picard is working. I do see some error messages here, but we'll figure it out. But we're going to see how to put this app behind Traefik first so we can access it, right? So for that, I'm going to go back and start Deployrr. Then I'm going to go to the reverse proxy menu, and I have the Traefik option. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to say yes. Proceed. Now give a name for the app. This will be used for the subdomain as well. So I'm going to just say Picard, and subdomain will be the same. I'm going to leave it at that for now. What is the IP address where it's available? It's 192.168.5.113, which is the name of or the IP address of our unprivileged Proxmox LXC. Then the protocol, which is HTTP. We're not using HTTPS. How do you know that? You can actually go to the this page right here, or the image that should tell you which port numbers are for what purposes and all of that stuff. So 5800 and it's HTTP. I believe it's written somewhere here. You can also see an example here. So that's how I know it's HTTP. So I'm going to do HTTP. And then we're going to provide the port number. 5800 is what we provided. We checked it was free, so we do that, and we're going to put it behind Authelia, make it available internally and externally. So that is done now. Let's see if the app is reachable. Okay, the app was reachable. Great, success. Now if we go here and we open up packard.anandslab.com. There you go. So I see the app opening up here. So it works. It's great, but it's still it is behind Authelia. We weren't asked for the username and password because I'm logged into another tab, logged into it in another tab right here. Now what's missing is that Packard is not in the Deployrr dashboard. Now how do you add those, right? So for this, let's go back to Mobaxterm, app data, and Deployrr dashboard and configuration config, and you have the services.yaml file. So you have to open the services.yaml. Here is a list of all the apps that you see on the dashboard. So you can use this as an example. There are 3 different columns: local, remote, and others. Now local URL for Packard, and then the remote URL for Packard. So you can see that there are 3 different tabs here. There's a local tab right here. Okay, so let's copy the whole thing from the starting placeholder to the ending placeholder, like Dozzle start, Dozzle end, right? I'm copying that. I'm gonna paste it right under, and I need to the formatting is a bit off, so make sure that it's on correctly. So now I'm gonna replace this with the Packard. Okay, I'm using the exact name that I used. It's better this way because then Deployrr can automate a few things. Packard for the name. The path number, IP address is the same, but the port number is 5800. And then I'm going to copy this. Okay, it's the same thing here, 5800. And if you want an icon, it's SSH Dozzle. Now here, I'm following the standards or documentation from a homepage. Okay, there are specific ways you can get the icons. I highly recommend Ethan's self-hosting website, which is, you probably already know, but I'm gonna show it to you. SCLFH.st and /icons, or if you just go to his website right there, you have the icons right here. Let's see if Packard is available. So unfortunately, Packard is not available here. You could check one of the other, if you go to homepage website or documentation, there are other places that you can get the icon from. This is the one, but there are options for it. MDI icons, maybe here, right here. So this is the one. So right here, you can see all the different options where you can get your icons from. Material design icons is one, simple icons is one. So, and you can see the prefix right there, right? So SH is self-host. Material design icons, I'm going to click on that one and I'm going to search for something. I don't know right now. I'll just search for music. Okay. So I have this icon here. So I can use MDI-music. So when I go back here, or where is that? So right here, Mobaxterm, I'm going to use MDI as music, and you don't need to change anything with this one. It's the name of the Docker server. Then name of the container name is Packard, so we're going to change it to Packard. If you want to show stats, you can enable this to true or leave it to false. False is the default, but I'm going to change it to true just as an example. And then finally the closing placeholder Packard. So we did that. When I save this and go back to my dashboard, you can see that it's automatically right here. There's a new one under local Packard with the icon and with the stats enabled. Now, if you don't see the stats for other containers, you can just click on the running part. It shows it's just not shown by default. You'll have to click it to see it. Now that this part is local part is done, we're going to copy from start to end for that placeholder. Go under remote section right there. We're going to copy and paste it. Follow the indentation properly. That's very important. Now the only thing that's going to change here is the URL, right? So https packard.anandslab.com. That's the same thing that I will copy, and I will copy it over the description as well. So the rest of it remains the same. So if I go back now, I saved it. Saved it already, I think. So let's save it and then go back here. Now it automatically refreshed. I see the remote URL as well. So that's how you can add another app behind or put it on your dashboard. Okay, we're almost to the end. So right now, just there are a few more things that are left. So the tools menu is the next one. So if we go into tools menu, there's a stack manager that allows you to manage the stack. I won't probably go into a lot of details here, but if you want to up the stack, down the stack, update your stack, which pulls all the updates for all the containers that you have running and then updates all the containers, that's also possible. You have the container status, which is 9 containers running right now. Actually, if you click on that, you will see a lot of different things about very nicely printed in a table format. So if you remember, we used the DPS Docker bash alias to see all the list of running containers. It was a mess of information. You could alternatively use this to find out if the containers are running, what port numbers are used, what IPs they are available at, all of this stuff. But IPs, I wouldn't pay too much attention to the IPs here, because these IPs are Docker network IPs. They're not the ones that you would use to access the apps, right? So that's a nice feature. So we're gonna go back now, and you can start the container, stop a specific container. Likewise, you can enable, disable services. Like if you find that, okay, we added Packard right now, I want to temporarily disable it, meaning I don't want to start it every time my server reboots and things like that. You could disable the service. You could even delete a service completely. So we're going to try that right now. So let's delete. I want to full delete. Safe delete is where the app data is kept. So the next time you install the app, the data is reused. Right now, I want to just fully remove Packard. So let's do that. But we did install Packard manually. I don't even know if that worked because it's been a while. So I'm going to try and see what happens, okay? But before that, I'm being offered the option to create a backup if I want to, okay? So it would be a nice time to create a backup, just in case something goes wrong. For now, I'm not going to create it. Let's do that separately. So I'm going to say no. Now I do see Packard right here because I followed all the standards from Deployrr. So I could use this option to uninstall it, but let's uninstall one that we installed using the official list, which is, I'm going to say pick adminer. So I just press yes, and Deployrr will automatically stop the container for you, remove all the references from all the right places and everything. So there won't be any trace of this app being on your Docker host at all. So really a lot of thought went into thinking about how I use my home server, how I manage it manually, and use that to really create Deployrr to address those needs. Okay, so we're done with that. So that's Stack Manager. Okay, the next one is backup. So now that we have a system that works really well, let's go ahead and take a backup. Okay, so we're going to hit backup right now. We have many different options. So first thing is I'm going to create a backup. Okay, so all the running containers will be stopped because it's a cold backup. So I'm going to say yes to create a backup of everything that we have. What is backed up right now is this Docker folder /home /unin/docker, because that's where everything went. So we're going to back up that folder. So there you go. A backup has been created. Do you want to restart the stack? So I'm going to say yes. So, and let it start. Okay. And there you go. All the apps that we installed will be started back up immediately. Okay. So, and then when it's done, I'm going to show you how you can see the list of backups that are available for you to pick and choose and maybe even try and restore. So here you go. Now, if I go to view backups, I'm going to see one backup that's available right there. When it was created, all the data, everything. It was created on the 25th of October, or no, not 25th, 2025, October. The 19th is the date and the time as well. So now I'm going to go back. Now, if I want to restore it, I can go to restore and all running containers will be stopped. Do you wish to proceed? I'm going to say yes. And you can, by default, your Docker backups folder that you specified before opens up, and on the right side I have the the backup that is selected. Really, you have to pay attention here because you need to select the file, right? So hit the keep hitting the tab key, and now it's highlighted. How do I know that? Because the 2 is of a different color. You see that? Now I'm going to keep moving and then go back to that again. Now it's highlighted. Then when I press the space button, that file is selected for restoring right here. So I have it ready. Now if I confirm, that is going to be used to restore, but I'm going to hit cancel right now because I don't want to mess up anything. So that was canceled. Now you could also delete backups. So I can go back up here and I don't like that and I want to delete that, or my space is full, whatever, because when you have Plex and all these other apps, the metadata can become so big that the backups become really big. So sometimes you might want to delete a backup. You can also create a migration package. Let's say my server is on Ubuntu 22.04. This is exactly what I did when I moved over my server last week. I created a migration package. I created the migration package, copied the package over to the new machine because I can use this file browser on the left, right click on a file and download it. Then I moved it to the new server and opened Deployrr backup and did the restore migration package restore option that you see right here. There are 2 caveats, okay? The first thing is the host name for the new system and the old system should match. In my case, it was HS for home server. The new one was home server. The username, the second caveat, is that the username should also match Anand and Anand. So it was no problem for me. I hit restore and it restores everything back up. Now there are ways to manage a new host name, so just reach out on Discord server and I can help you out there. Maybe I even have a Deployrr documentation. We'll open it up in the end and then see if it's available there. Okay, so for now, this is all the option in the backups menu. So let's go back to the tools menu and see what else is out there. There are some diagnostics here. You can see that the system is healthy right now, no issues. But sometimes when you're messing around, you might play with some stuff and you can mess something up really. So if I go into Docker and I set the wrong permission, chmod 7777 for the environment file, I have to use sudo. Now it's readable by many people and it's a confidential file. So then now if I go back in here and open Deployrr, I should already see that the system is unhealthy. Even on the main screen, you will see that right there, system health unhealthy. So I have to go, if I go into tools and diagnostics, I see that it's unhealthy. So if I click on that, you will see what exactly is the problem right here. So I can click on this and then it should automatically fix the problem for me. So right there, it's done. Everything is good now. Sometimes when you are copy pasting Docker Compose files from random repositories online, you don't follow the indentation that is very important for YAML. You leave an extra space and things like that, and your stack will not start. This is where YAML Yoda comes in handy. All good right now. There are no issues, but if there are some issues that you see, some key problems or messages that show up in your terminal, you can run YAML Yoda and it runs through all the files that you have in place and tell you which file and probably even which line you have a problem, and you can go back and fix that. So that's YAML Yoda. Okay, now let's see what else is available here. You can create a MariaDB database manually. Again, you don't need that. You have adminer or phpMyAdmin, which is also part of Deployrr. You can use those. Same way with PostgreSQL database. If you want to create a database, you can edit your environment files here. You can also edit your secrets. Remember when we were, I don't know if I showed you, but if you have secrets and env files, so if I click on that, it'll show you a list of all the environment variables that you have. And if you want to change something, you can use this to edit and change something. For example, I want to change the port for Picard from 5800 to 5801, and that's it. Now we changed it. Now I do have to recreate Picard for that change to take effect, but we're not going to do that right now. So for now, you can edit your env or environment variables there. You could also edit your secrets. Right now, I have all of these secrets right here, right? We know the Cloudflare DNS API token. So here is the token. If I want to edit it, I can edit and then press Control X, Y, and come out of it, and that's it. So you could do that as well. What else is there? I think there's one more option right here. Change host name. This is another one. So This is what I was talking about when we were making the migration package. Adapt Deployrr to a new host name. So when you restore a package, Deployrr settings also get copied over to the new system. But then if the host name is different, things could be messy, and of course you would see an unhealthy message on your home screen as well. So you have that indicator there. But if that happens, you can come here and you hit the change host name, and things will be taken care of for you. Okay, for now we don't have to do that. So that's the tools menu. Next we have the settings menu. So in the settings menu, I think we already saw a few of those. So there is an intro message on off. There is a message in the home screen or the first main menu of Deployrr intro message. If you don't want to see that, you're an expert, you know what everything is. You could save some screen space, you can turn it off. We're already using the expert mode, which we turned on when we were doing some checks in the beginning, if you remember. You have the status here. If you click on that, you will see when an app was installed, what time, and all of that stuff. So you have some details there. We already saw the sanitized log option. Now there is an option to refresh Deployrr cache. This is when I make a change in the configuration that is available in the server and you want to pull those changes down here, then you can use the refresh option. There's a reset option that completely erases the status information for Deployrr. Now this doesn't remove your containers, this doesn't make any change to your Docker folder, it only resets the Deployrr settings. That's it, nothing else. Then finally you have remove Deployrr, which only removes Deployrr. Once again, it does not affect your Docker setup or the containers or your settings or your app data. Nothing is touched. So that is the settings menu for you. Then finally we have the about menu. So we already saw this one as well. You have the recommended usage. You know, sometimes local mode, hybrid mode, you don't know what it is. You can come back in here, and people were confused, so I added this. I'm not even really sure if this is interesting or useful anymore. You have the view pin and the reset pin option. Sometimes I have offers going on. If you want to upgrade your membership with a little bit of a discount, you might see a discount code here that pops up. There are license type explanations, so if you really want to understand what different license types do, you can come back and check this one as well. What else do we have here? Change log. If you want to see what has changed in Deployrr over the last, you can see that here. How to get support Discord server is the primary way, and then when you click on it, you're going to see that information. Then I think that's about it. I think we covered most of all the options. There is a way to provide feedback from right here. You don't have to even exit out of Deployrr. You can submit your feedback from here, and it goes right to my database, so we can I can look up if you have any positive feedback. If you have any negative feedback, which is quite rare, please give a descriptive description of what problem you're facing, because there are at least 1 or 2 people who give a rating of 1 but then really don't say what the problem was, and I can't really help. I don't know if it's a user issue or if it's a bug in the app or if there is a problem in the logic. I have no idea. So it's important that if you give a lower rating, you explain why it is, so I can do something about it. Otherwise I don't know if it has any benefit if you give a lower rating, you know, and it may not even be fair because it could be a user error in the end. So anyway, so that's the end of all menu options that are in Deployrr. The last thing I want to mention is, where do you go for support? Well, at least part of it we already addressed. You can go to the Discord server and get support. How do you reach the Discord server? If you go to homelabbers.com, there is a link to the Discord server right here. You can see here, and you can see the join Discord button right here. That's one way to get to the Discord server. But the other way is that a lot of times the same question gets asked on Discord server again and again. I take those and I create documentation out of it. So if you go to docs.deployrr.org or docs.deployrr.app, you will find the link in the description below. You can find most of the problems, common problems at least, listed here. So there are many sections here. So you can see app specific problems here. How do I remove authentic? How do I put Home Assistant behind Traefik? Everything is explained in detail here. So if you go in here, you will see all the details of how to get Home Assistant behind Traefik. Then some people try to use Jellyfin on LG Smart TV, and they can't because it needs a specific configuration. How do I get around that? Now, how do I configure theme park, which some people use? On Deployrr, for example, there are many different things. How do I change the host name, which I spoke about a few minutes back? How do I get support via SSH? In case you run into issues and you cannot do anything, you cannot find solutions on Deployrr or Discord server, I can help out. I cannot promise because I do get many messages and I need to figure out and manage my time and figure out how to help you. But most of your questions should be answered with these documentation right here. So yeah, and then retrieving a pin, everything is listed here. So if you have a common issue, first, please search here. You will find a lot of information here. Now, one other common question that people ask is, how do I connect different apps together? For example, if you're on Radar and you want to add, I don't know, SAB NZBD or qBittorrent into Radar, how do you do that? You can, if you go to networking, for example, connecting applications together. Now, this explains how you should connect applications together. For example, if you're on Radar and you want to add SAB NZBD here, this is the connection string you should use. This is the port number that you should use. So it's quite easy. It's all there. Please check the documentation. Another one here, you can see UFW and Deployrr, which is a really advanced topic. I won't go into that right now. OPNsense, if you have a conflict with OPNsense, that's explained here as well. Go back to Docker. How do you use custom.yaml YAML that comes with Deployrr? Now, you don't even actually need to use it because we already saw how to add Pecard. You could copy the same Docker compose into custom.yaml and make it work that way. It's just there. I don't think it has a real need, but you know how to add additional apps. Then if you have internet connectivity issues, which can happen in Debian or older versions of Debian, this is what you need to do to fix that problem. Docker pull rate is another one. If you reach the limit, this is the timeout that you will start to see. That's because you've been pulling too many Docker images and Docker servers flag you as the bad boy and they cut access. So one way to get over that or circumvent that is to connect your Docker account, which is what I spoke about in the beginning. So you could also do that manually using this command or use Deployrr to connect your account. Then what else? I think I already spoke about bash aliases. There are all the different aliases that Deployrr uses. You can see that. Rclone sometimes can throw errors, mount point not empty error. If you face that, here's the fix for that. And then you have a bunch of different Traefik documentation as well. Multi-server setup with the same domain. You have one domain, but then you have multiple servers. How do you handle that with Deployrr? If you have multiple domains, what do you do? What do you do that, or what do you do in that case? Now, if you have a root domain, or if you want the root domain to point to your Deployrr dashboard, like for example, I want to go to uninstall.com and I want to see the dashboard. How do you do that? That's explained right here. What to do. You can also have IP access list. Traefik can only allow certain IPs to reach you and block certain others. Or in this case, it's only allow list, or only the IPs belonging to these ranges would be able to access any service that's behind Traefik. You can also bypass Traefik authentication altogether, and that's explained right here. Where is this helpful? In apps like NZB360, where you want to add Radar to it, you need to be able to bypass the initial authentication steps. And this is how you do it. And this is in fact explained in the Ultimate Docker Media Server series as well. Here you can see Traefik and conditional auth bypass. And that's explained here. Also, you have the CrowdSec articles that I didn't really speak about previously as well. Now it's almost 5th hour of me recording here, so I'm starting to really lose my voice now. Okay, so there is a bunch of different documentation that is available here. Now, if you really like what I'm doing, like this video, which is almost 5 to 6 hours of recording, not even taking into account the editing time that's going to take for me to edit, I put in a lot of effort into these kind of things. If you're already a Deployrr purchaser, I really appreciate it. But if you find it even more valuable than you thought it would be, please consider upgrading to one of the memberships. You see many of them here in bronze, silver, gold. They do come with Deployrr access built in. I keep adding more and more to the platinum benefit. There's going to be a new app, not an app, but basically an AI chatbot specifically for my own content, YouTube, Deployrr documentation, the articles on my website. Using this, an AI RAG chatbot, which is called LabMate, that's going to come out. That's going to help answer many questions that you have. Going to be on the Discord server, so please be on the Discord server, and you should be able to tag LabMate as a platinum member, and LabMate can jump in and answer the questions for you. So I have many exciting things planned. So if you find value in what I'm delivering, please consider becoming a member. That was it, everybody. It was a long one, almost 6 hours of recording time, but I do have some closing messages before I lose my voice. While Deployrr offers multiple license options, the core prerequisite menu items are always free. Anyone can download and use those foundational tools without a registration. Once again, you will find a detailed comparison right on Deployrr product page on my website. So check it out anytime you have any questions, or just reach out to me on my Discord server. I am transparent about why these paid options exist. They are how I finance this blog and all the free videos I create for you. I usually have some kind of promo going on. I will have a big one for Black Friday very soon, so watch out for that. But remember, Deployrr is built directly on the principles of my free Ultimate Docker Media Server series of guides and videos. You can always follow those instead. If you still want to show support for my work for free, the best ways are very simple. Please subscribe to my channel, like this video, and tell a friend about what I do here. There is so much more you can do with Deployrr. I could not cover them all here. If you want to know more about something in more detail, leave a comment below, or I will cover it in my future video. Thank you so much for your support. If you still haven't expressed your comment on my daughter's background music for this video, please leave that comment below. She would really appreciate it. Thank you very much once again. I sincerely appreciate every single one of you, especially my Discord community and all my supporters. Take it easy, Geek Army. I will see you in the next video.